What, you expect me to say something about an overview? This thing is boring all by itself. Alright, third take. Just like the Beetlezord, the Swordfish Sword also comes with its own little mechanical gimmick feature all by itself. Set it down on a hard flat surface and... it's subtle, but nice. Why is that always catching? I don't get that. Why is that catching? Seriously, what's going on here? Didn't do that in the... Actually, it did do that in the other three tanks, but okay, whatever. Anyways, yeah, it can roll about quite nicely. Rubber wheels, collecting plenty of dust on the shooting shelf. It's subtle, not much change. The fins themselves are also on the floppy side, so that helps to exaggerate it. And from the top, why is that catching? That's really annoying. Okay, it's catching. Quality control issue. Bandai America might want to look into that. But still, nice gimmick. Of course, what kind of Zord Builder System release would this be if it didn't come with a 3.5-inch, non-posable, derpy face, but nicely painted, nicely sculpted, blue Samurai Mega Ranger? Which, to be fair, even though it is fixed posed, molding detail is still really nice, really good quality. It's a natural flow to how the Ranger's body is fixed. Doesn't look unnatural, except maybe how much weight there is on that Mega Blade. Even the Mega Blade itself has some really nice molding on it. There's no reuse of parts here, by the way, from the green Mega Ranger from the Beetlezord set, but he does still have holes in the bottom. I wonder what you're supposed to do with those. So what you do with those, take that peg right there, and you carefully peg the foot in, like that. And unlike also with the Beetlezord, his foot actually does, well, at least it hovers over the platform, but he can indeed put his foot on the other platform. And I must say, this actually looks a lot more convincing. I know it's fuzzy, but this actually looks a lot more convincing as a Ranger riding atop a Zord than the green Mega Ranger did atop the Beetlezord. I'm just saying. And just the pose looks more natural. You can actually do things with the sword to make him look a little more badass. And I kind of like to tilt it upward. Aww. You know my rant from reviewing the Beetlezord, so not a whole lot I could say here. I will say, though, it is, despite the fact being really, really thin, it's actually more stable structurally than the Beetlezord is. At least it can kind of stand up on its own. Kind of. Kind of. I think the big problem with it is the slots that were not really cut into the nose piece and into the Mohawk. They don't actually allow, there actually isn't enough of a gap in there to actually allow the intervening cardboard from the other pieces to get in there. So it's always going to twist and warp. Really annoying. But there it is. An origami Swordfish Zord. Having already removed the helmet, placing it into the left leg so you can see it peeking out right of the crack right there. Ooh, a crack in the world. Does that mean that Nilox will actually pop out of the Samurai Megazord's leg? Continuity issue. We're going to remove the left arm. Set that down. Set that down. Lift up on both pairs of front fins. Detach the head. Taking the Samurai Mega Blade, Megazord Saber thingy, and you see that hole just there, making certain that the blade is angled upwards, we're going to turn it into the true Swordfish Zord. That thing don't need eyes and a nose, it has a whole sword for its head. Carefully place this on the oddly angled elbow joint. And we're going to take the helmet, put it just up here, snap it down. It doesn't really like snapping on there or snapping off. And there you have the Swordfish Fencer Megazord. Wow, they're really good at coming up with names for these things, aren't they? Not a whole lot I can say about the Swordfish Fencer Megazord. I repeat, that's a terrible name. But, I like the helmet. Helmet's pretty satisfying. Yeah, so it's got a little gap in there. I don't care. So what if the mouth is visible? I don't care. It's yeah, it gets the point across. No pun intended, it gets the point across. That's actually a nice helmet. I like that helmet. This thing, on the other hand, well, it's long, and it's narrow, and it's plenty of bad puns waiting to happen. You've already seen this. Tail's just going to flip-flop as it is right there, so not really much you can do about that. And it just uses that connection point right there. Ratchets every... Whoa! There goes the torso. I wish that torso joint was a little tighter. Let's see, get a better angle. There you go. It ratchets every 45 degrees all the way around. It's a very tight ratchet, by the way. Very tight. Not sure whether that's a good thing or not. And there's your Swordfish Fencer Megazord. So, what is the difference between the Zord Builder System Swordfish Zord with Mega Ranger set and its original Japanese counterpart, the Samuragate Series No. 2 Kajiki Origami? Well, there's a pretty gosh darn big difference. Very, very, very big difference. Let's see. I wish I could shoot in widescreen. You can see that, well, it's almost double the length. Let's see if I can line these up a little better. You can tell that I rehearsed this today, right? Actually, it would probably be better if I did it this way, because it kills off the perspective. But anyways, yeah, there's a big difference between the two. One is several inches longer than the other. It's also several inches higher. It's a notable... You could almost put an action figure in the distance between these 2 points here. So anyways, yeah. This does have a mouth. However, the mouth is already on it, right there. And the nose can bounce up and down for whatever reason. But yeah, it does have a mouth, which is oddly molded in orange plastic. I don't know why. The fins, same thing, mold up or fold forward and backwards. Although the kind of big gimmick, actually I had two gimmicks, but the first one is I had these push-to-fire torpedoes, which, you know, the whole toy-making world nowadays is getting into these flick and fire missiles. So, you know, the harder you push on it, the faster it comes out. It's just this puny little thing, and you're never going to see those missiles ever again. It came with 3, although oddly it could only carry 2. It still had 3 wheels on the bottom, so it could roll. But notice, the tail is molded in a single piece. Well, we can take care of that. You see there's this little latch on the top. You lift up on it, and then you spin the heat-in disc, because that's what the gimmick of the show is. You spin the heat-in disc, and you make the nose bounce up and down. Yeah, so anyways, there's that difference right there. So that's the difference between them in individual accessory Zord Mecha form. Okay, so now what about their combined forms? Yeah, I would say there are some really, really, really big differences between the Swordfish Fencer Megazord, that's really awkward to say, and the Kajiki Shinken-O. Big differences. So big, in fact, hey look, it doesn't have a backpack. Crazy. Oh, and also the dorsal fin also splits in half. So, yeah. But, you know, at least it has a floppy tail on it. That's kind of interesting. So you can look at it in a different way every time. Interactive. Way of the future, folks. Interactive toys. That's how you do it. Oh, and by the way, yes, that is, again, another reason why it is that they tilted the shoulder joints at an awkward angle all the time so that could accommodate this really big sword, which, by the way, it actually didn't appear like that in the show. It appeared more something like this. So, yeah, there's some pretty huge differences between the two. Oh, look! They're the same height now. Woohoo! In a previous video, I said I wasn't going to do big comparisons between the Japanese versions and the US versions. I said I wasn't going to do that because I'm supposed to review these based on their own merits. Well, in this particular case, I'm going to have to break my rule and say you kind of have to compare it to the Japanese version in order for me to explain what it is that I think about I almost called this the Kajiki origami. That's the Kajiki origami. That's the Swordfish sword. Please forgive me if I get them confused. I won't get them confused. You will. Anyways, the Kajiki origami is probably my least favorite of the origami because it did so many things wrong. It had so much potential. There were so many things they could have done with it, and they just did everything they possibly could to piss you off about it. It's by far the most hateful of all of them, okay? Even more than the DX Mogyu Daio, but I'll discuss that in another video. The first thing is, if you watch it in the show, and I know the deluxe transforming toys, you're not really supposed to worry about posability, especially with the accessory sets, and in particular the origami, because, well, none of them could really pose except for the Saru origami. It's been 3 years, I'm starting to forget the names already. Actually, it's been 4 years. But anyways, you're not really supposed to worry about posability. So when it rolls, okay, I'll say that. When it rolls through the water, you could very obviously see the tail wiggling back and forth in the show. You can also see it in the Power Rangers Samurai footage as well. But that's not what this does. It's fixed pose, except for one little thing. The action gimmick is you turn the heat-in disc and the nose just kind of bumps a little. That's it. That's not even 5 degrees right there. It's not even 10 degrees, folks. It's just kind of bump. So what you're supposed to do is bump it up and down a lot like this. Now, while its nose does go up and down by itself, by the way, why does it go way up like that? Even though the nose does bounce up and down, believe it or not, the nose actually goes side to side more, and it also looks like he has the mumps. You know, it always looked like the Kajiki origami, not in the show, but as a toy, it always looked like it had mumps. And, by the way, it's called a swordfish. It's a marlin, I think. That's not really much of a sword. You know, that's not even 1.5 inches of nose. It's just kind of... It's a dolphin dressed as Mr. T sitting atop a fish cart, waiting to be rolled off to the butcher. Great image. So the proportions were off a little bit. The action feature was a little skewed. This thing was... And then there was these things, which... I hated these things. There was no reason for these to exist. In my opinion, the Kajiki origami should have represented a specific style of fencing or sword technique or whatever it is. Instead, they decided to put little torpedoes on there. Made no sense whatsoever. Honestly, it feels, looks, and just... It's a throw-together gimmick, and nobody liked it. But nobody liked it. Not even in the show. I think they used those like once, maybe twice ever. They used it in its debut, and then maybe one other time randomly. And then all the other times, it's just kind of an energy aura projecting, just kind of, whoa! And that was it. So, you know, the torpedo things were But at least we got an opening nose on it, right? He can open his nose, right? I'll get to that in a moment. So, the bouncing nose thing doesn't work. We didn't like this. I don't know how much people dislike the Kajiki origami compared to me, but I was not thrilled with it at all individually. On to this thing. This thing basically does, and I'll say it now just so I don't have to say it later, basically does everything right that the Kajiki origami should have done. Case in point, when it rolls on the ground, the correct thing moves. It has a long-ish nose on it, like he doesn't nearly look like he has the mumps nearly as badly as the Kajiki Origami, but the Swordfish Zord, you know, it's nice and slim. It actually tapers to a point, a PVC point, but a point nonetheless. So it's also much smaller. Excuse me. They eliminated the missile launcher, and it doesn't look like he's seated atop a fish cart, shopping cart, whatever it is. It actually looks like a solid body because, it didn't make much sense to put that there. This thing, look how tall this thing is. Yes, it had to be able to accommodate the Daitenku, but on the other hand, the Daitenku didn't have to be that big. But anyways, yeah, I mean, the whole body is sitting here, and then from the Hiden disc down, it's just kind of excess. And oh, by the way, we molded in fins so you wouldn't know the difference. Really? We wouldn't notice the difference? So yeah, they removed the fish cart thing, and it looks a little more proportionate. The tail is actually a lot bigger. So yeah, the proportions on things, and the action feature does exactly what it's supposed to, and the missiles were removed. So I'll be honest and say this surprised the crap out of me when I got it and when I played with it individually. It does everything, like, it limits what it's supposed to do, but at least what it can do, it does correctly. Yeah, I don't care if the mouth can open or close or not. That doesn't bother me, so whatever. Oh yeah, one other thing. As far as the Hiden disc is concerned, the what are they called? Power discs, I guess. Well, you're getting a power pancake because, well, there it is. It's just kind of a flat oval thing. So clearly they weren't concerned about whether or not it was even there or not. So, whatever. But the Swordfish Zord by itself, satisfying. Simple, but satisfying. It's really frustrating how all the things that I dislike about the Kajiki Origami by itself only become magnified when it becomes Kajiki Shinkano. And I already did a video review of the Kajiki Origami, so watch it over there. But just quickly going over it again, the gimmick, the nose bouncing gimmick, which is what this blue thing is for, is rendered completely neutered because the helmet doesn't go anywhere near it. You know, so the nose can't bounce back and forth. The nose has to be manually operated by you. And the missiles, that's the best you can do. Now, in the show, the Kajiki Shinkano bends over at the waist, at the hips, and then the missiles slide forward, and then that's it. If the Shinkano had been able to do that, no worries, no problems there. But Kajiki Shinkano, unfortunately, suffers as a result of this. It would have been an engineering nightmare, no doubt. But anyways, the other thing that it does, as a result of this gimmick here not working properly in combined form, you end up having to do this manually. Now, having a sword mounted onto the head, it's the Swordfish Zord, it's a Marlin, it's going to have a big nose on it. I seriously doubt having a sword coming out this way would have been very amusing. So this is, you know, an acceptable alternative. How it was executed is where I have the problem. You don't turn this thing and then have the nose bounce back and forth. No, you have to manually tip it over yourself. I ranted and raved about that. So while the gimmick itself is a nice idea, it was just, again, it was poorly executed. So there is those two rather significant issues when it comes to the Kajiki Origami. On the other hand, one of the things, perhaps the only thing that I liked about the Kajiki Origami, or rather its combination, the only thing I liked is the helmet was justifiably nice. It was a nice helmet. I like it. It was a good helmet. It incorporated the animal head in there somehow, but it doesn't look ridiculous. It's refined. It's kind of a ancient knight kind of look to it. Like, it works. That's good for me. And then, appropriately so, the rest of the body becomes a backpack, which, I can live with it. I hate how this toy was constructed, but and how the gimmicks on it don't work. But for the most part, it's appropriate to set it up as a backpack. This, by the way, is what the Beetlezord and the Kabuto Origami should have done it this way when they were combined. So really, the Kajiki Origami, the one that I hate the most, is the one that actually carried off the transformation combined form properly. How's that for irony? So visually, Kajiki Shinkano works. Functionally, not so much. Okay, now, this thing, on the other hand, they got the helmet right. It looks like it should look. And again, you know, just personal side, I do like the look of the helmet. So, no worries there. The mouth doesn't open or close. Again, doesn't bother me. I'm not concerned about that. It might bother other people, but I'm not worried about that. But what the hell is this thing? Again, it looks nothing like that in the show. It looks nothing at all like that in the show. And by the way, that shoulder joint is really, really tight. You just saw what I tried to do. You have to hold on to the torso in order to get it to turn upwards. And by the way, it's not the Samurai Megazord's joints that are causing the problem, but it's the tightness of the mechanism inside the Swordfish Zord that's making that so tight. You might have to go in there and sand something down, or I don't know. I'm sure there's a fix on a forum on the internet somewhere. You can look that up. But for the most part, again, the gimmick is rendered completely useless. I don't know. I guess that's kind of amusing to have like, as a swordfish, it's a good pun. It's a swordfish. Okay, so the pun is there waiting to be exploited, but as a limb, it fails. Okay? And here's the thing, and I actually brought this up when I did the review of the Beetle Zord as well. By the way, it's not easy to get that off there. This is too tight, whether it's rotating or being pulled on or pushed on. Here's the thing I don't get. Why didn't they just do that? Put a pair of tabs there, just right there. Problem solved. You know, you can even turn the fin a little bit if you like. Why didn't they do that? Because, as I pointed out with my Beetle Zord review, this lever thingy here, whatever this is, this thing was not on the Japanese version. This is a Bandai America thing. The tabs here are meant for Bandai America Zord Builder System toys. So why didn't they take advantage of it? Put a pair of tabs, one on either side, wherever it is, plunk, and right there, done. Problem solved. You wouldn't even have to engineer it to hold on to this thing because, well, it would be holding on to it with the, I'm trying to attach it without seeing it. It would be this kind of scenario. Why didn't they do that? I don't get it. You don't have to fold open the Mohawk thing here. You don't even have to do that. It's just, there it is. And it fits. There's actually enough space in here. You can get that little wheel to fit in there. Stick some super glue on there and done. You'll never be able to transform it or combine it ever again, but, I mean, there it is. Bandai America. Not thinking. Why didn't you guys do that? So, yeah, that's a pretty big fail. Right there. Okay, yeah, so, Swordfish Fencer Megazord combination. Really, really bad execution. Really bad execution. Except for the appearance of the helmet. I hate this thing. Oh, speaking of the helmet, one last time, the big gimmick of the Kajiki Shinkano combination is the sword that sits on the top. You loosen the latch, you tip it over, and poorly executed, nice idea. Okay, that's not the problem. However, the Swordfish Zord's helmet is designed differently because the mouth does not open up. But yet they still have to represent this attack feature in some way. You may not have noticed it during the transformation that I showed originally, but the helmet for the Swordfish Fencer Zord actually has kind of an interesting little feature to it. Here's the mouth, and I also pointed out, no pun intended, that the Swordfish Zord actually, the nose is a little longer and it's a little shapelier and blah blah blah. Notice, if you will please, the gray plastic sitting on the inside of the helmet here. Watch closely what happens when I attach the helmet right about there. You'll notice the helmet is going down, but the nose stays in the same position. There we go. What changed? Well, it's subtle enough you may not have noticed it, but now all of a sudden there's a little gap that's developed right here. And that is because... I don't like the way this helmet goes on and on. That is because the nose can extend because the head of the Megazord pushes up against this gray plastic, and as a result, the nose extends. And it extends... where does it go? There it goes. And it extends... Look at the gap right there. Look at the gap right there. It extends as you're combining it. How about that? That's pretty cool. And the interesting thing about this nose, you can actually extend it quite a bit. So even though you can't take the... where is it? Here it is. Oh yeah, you've got the whole sword thing attached here. Even though you've got this thing attached down here, in a strange way, they do represent that special attack. I don't know what's called for Power Rangers, and quite frankly, I don't care. There it is. You could almost call it Automorph. You can almost call it Automorph, but it's not quite. That was not in the instructions, by the way. Now, I'm not going to critique Bandai America for not putting it in the instructions, because really they didn't need to put it there. There's nobody's going to be in danger if you push down on it and the thing stays at the same height. But, yeah. I like that. Even if the sword was never designed on the Kajiki Shinkano, if it was never designed to go up there, I like that. Not just that this comes out and it becomes a little longer, and by the way, you can very much exploit this when the swordfish is by itself, but it's just, it looks nice, it looks functional, it's an appropriate substitute. This helmet is awesome, by the way. The rest of it is crap, but the helmet works. Very, 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 very nice. No, very awesome. I desperately wish I could put footage of Power Rangers Samurai into this video. No copyright infringement intended, of course. But it would be easier to show it than it would be to describe it. But there's one thing that occurs only in the television series, and not just in Power Rangers Samurai, but also in Shinkenger. And that is, and this is not a required thing, almost immediately after forming the Kajiki Shinken-O, the Daishinken sword, whoa, almost fell over, will transform or morph itself into what is known as the Naginata mode. And forgive me if I'm saying that wrong. Which is basically a Darth Maul stylized, twin-sided sword thingy weapon. Okay? So the Kajiki Shinken-O could do that in the show. The Swordfish Fencer Megazord, I had to think for a moment there what that thing's called. That's a really terrible name. The Swordfish Fencer Megazord also does the same thing because, you know, the footage is imported over from Japan, so naturally it can do the same thing. Unfortunately, you can't really, you know, the transformations are completely different. In Japan, the Naginata mode is a TV series exclusive weapon. It's only seen on the screen. It's never represented as a toy. And the reason for this is the transformation for the Kame Origami requires that the hole for the hand cannot go all the way through because they're trying to preserve the badge mode. You know, that's reasonable enough. It's kind of frustrating considering that the hand doesn't grip the entire length of the sword. It's frustrating, but what are you going to do, you know? What they could have done to rectify the situation is the Kajiki Origami specifically would have come with an alternate version of the Daishinken, which would have been like this, and there would have been a gap in the, you know, there would have been a tube that you would fit the real Daishinken into, and then the top half would fit into the hand. The bottom half would just hang off the bottom. So you would essentially have something that looked like this. Okay? Except it would have been off-center like this. Flipped around. So that's what I thought they should have done with the Naginata mode. By the way, I'd like to point out, research online indicates that the Japanese people never, ever, ever developed a two-sided sword. That is a Star Wars thing only, apparently. And by the way, while there is a Naginata, and forgive me for butchering that word, It's basically a staff with a long blade on the end. It was never a two-sided sword thingy, okay? That's only in Star Wars as far as I can tell. For Dead Guy, Darth Maul has influenced many, many moviegoers for many, many years. So I don't know why they call it Naginata, because even in Japan that doesn't make sense. So anyways, you had to preserve the badge mode. That's the reason why the sword can't go all the way through, and that's why the Naginata mode is not represented in toy form. Well, coincidentally alone, the Turtle Folding Zord can also form the badge mode. However, there was no priority in preserving the badge appearance. It's purely coincidence of the transformation that this thing can do this, okay? It's purely coincidence. If that's true, and it absolutely is true, then why doesn't this hole go through to the other side? If they're not trying to intentionally preserve the badge mode, then why would you have to worry about the badge mode being ruined? Because you're not trying to preserve it, and again, it's coincidence. There should have been a hole going all the way through. That way, and you know, my whole rant about how the arm looks like crap and should have been put back down. Let me push this over a little bit. You know, you could have put the backpack thing back here. That being the case, you could have put this, the sword would go all the way through. Okay, it would have gone all the way through, and look at that. There's just enough hanging off the bottom there. You could have taken an alternate version of the Samurai Megazord Saber with a little, I don't know what you would have on the other end, plug it into the opposite side, and lo and behold, you've got a two-sided Naginata mode. Assuming, of course, the hole went all the way through. I about kicked myself when I realized, right, kicking myself right now. I about kicked myself when I realized that a couple of weeks ago when I opened this thing up and I realized, oh my god, they don't care about the badge mode, and yet they were so concerned about preserving that. You know, they could actually have saved a couple of pennies by having that hole go all the way through. And then you could have the body of the swordfish hanging on the back, and then you could have had a Naginata mode represented in the other arm. It's so frustrating. I can't even put it into words how stupid Bandai America is sometimes. They simplify it, but then they totally simplify it in the wrong way. Like, that was a good idea. That extending nose thing was a good idea. The rest of it is crap. I mean, think what you will of the Kajiki Origami and the Kajiki Shingano combination. I'm talking about this thing now. There are so many things. They got about half of it right. So while I like some of the things they did with it, I don't like other things they did about it. So in the final analysis, the Zord Builder System Swordfish Zord with Mega Ranger is not bad by itself. Its combined form has some advantages. That's nice. But this arm thing is completely inappropriate and completely wrong. I'm going to start repeating myself at this point, and I think I've already stretched out this conclusion as long as I should. So, there it is. It's good individually, but combined it's kind of crap. And I say kind of crap because of that thing. This is AV Unit 4A for CollectionDX.com, signing off.